Okay, welcome back for another video. In this video, we are going to be going over tutorial number 3. So, obviously, prerequisites for this, you should have done tutorial 1, exercise 1, tutorial 2, exercise 2, and you should also have viewed the setting operation defaults for the lathe video. That is extremely helpful. In this video, there's really not a lot that's different here. Pretty much everything we've already done, so you should know how to do this. There's one little, we'll call it a bit of a little tricky way of creating the geometry in here that we need to address, and also we're going to add a tapped hole. But the tapped hole is easy. It's very simple, just like drilling, only you're picking a tap and a tap cycle. So, without further ado, let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is go in, get my lathe default, and I'm going to go to my planes, make sure I'm working on the correct plane, and I am ready to draw. So the first point is going to be 0, 0, enter, 0.6, 0, enter, 0.6, negative, it looks like that would be 1.12. Okay, and that is where I'm going to stop. So for this, I'm actually going to draw to here, and I'm going to put this radius in, then I'm going to start back here and meet in the middle and connect these two radii with a line that's tangent on both. And to demonstrate why, I'll show you why this wouldn't work if I just drew an angled line. I don't really know where my points are for the beginning and start. I could trig them out, but it's a little bit easier. We have easier ways of doing it than taking the time to trig it out. So let me just demonstrate. If I draw an angled line, and let's say I make another line vertical, and if I go and I put a fillet in there, in this case it's already set up for 0.2, notice that the start of my radius is not at this line like it's supposed to be. It actually splits the difference and it moves the fillet to the right. So this, if we did it this way, it would create a part that is geometrically inaccurate, dimensionally inaccurate. So you'd be making a part that is not correct. So we don't want to do that. So I'm going to hit escape and get out of there. And I am actually just going to create my fillet on here, and I'm going to create it as a circle, and I'm going to just zero these out. Alright, so the first thing I know is that my radius needs to be 0.2, and that is already in there. So it's asking for the start point. So there's the start point of my circle. Now, technically a circle always goes, it always goes counterclockwise. So the start is always going to be at 3 o'clock unless otherwise specified, or 0. And then it starts going around by degrees counterclockwise. So what I want is I want an arc that's actually going kind of like this. I want this section of arc down here, but I want this -90 point to be at my point, at my my base point that I clicked. So what I'm going to do, since an arc goes counterclockwise, the last point, this is actually going to be my start point, and down here at this quadrant is going to be my end point. So I want my end point on the part that I clicked, this little spot right here at the end of this line. So I'm going to select end point here. And since it's the same, nothing changed because I have 0 and 0 in here. But if I make this -90, notice that now it changes. And my start point, I don't need it to start all the way up there. I could leave this, this would be fine. But let's just make it 180 and hit check. Okay, so there we have a nice arc, and it's basically a quarter of a circle. And we're going to like that. That's good. Okay, so that is perfect for what we're trying to do. Alright, so next I'm going to start from the left side of this drawing, and I'm going to work my way over to here. Oops. Okay, so we're going to start our first point, and that is going to be 1.44, comma, negative 3.0, enter. Okay, so there's the back of our part. Now, there's a couple of ways you can draw with Mastercam. I've been using absolute positioning, using X, Y, and Z coordinates, mostly basically just X and Z coordinates in this case, because we're in the lathe. But I can also create a length and an angle. Now, depending on how much math you have to do and how this is drawn, it may be easier for you to do it that way. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a line length of 0.2 because of the way this is dimensioned, and a 0, enter. The next one is going to be an angle of negative 18 and a line length, well, I don't really care how long the line is, quite frankly. And I'm going to make an intersection here, so I'm going to make this longer than it needs to be. Delete that one, that was a mistake. Okay, and then I have a point of, it looks like you can see where I have 0.75. So what I'm going to start with, I'll show you what I mean here. This point right here, 0.75, I'm going to start with this line, and I'm going to draw it as an intersection. And then I'm just going to create that fillet in there. Because that is an intersection, so I don't have to worry about this when moving it. That is going to give us the correct dimensional part. Alright, so I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to draw a straight line across. Okay, so let's go with endpoint is going to be negative 2.25. Oh, check that. That's my... That was my Z. My diameter I need first, and my diameter is going to be 1.23. 1.23, comma, negative 2.25. Enter. And there's my start point, and I'm just going to draw that and hit enter. Okay, so there we go. Now I have this drawn. And now what I'm going to do is just put that that radius in there, 0.1. And generally I go and wait till the end until I do the radii, but in this case I want to get a lot of that junk out of there, so I'm going to put it in a while. Okay, so now it's all cleaned up. Now I'm ready to continue my drawing. So I'm going to continue down, and I'm going to go to, it looks like a 1-inch diameter, 1.0, comma, negative 2.25. And I'm going to go straight over, and I'm just going to go over further than I need to. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to go over to, it looks like 3 inches minus 1.15. So I'm going to go to 1.0, comma, and 3 minus 1.15 is going to be 2.85. Oops, it's negative. Negative 2.85. Enter. Oops. Looks like I made a mistake there. Yeah, I did. Okay. Let me redo that one. Delete that. Okay, so it's actually 1.85. That's where I made my mistake. I accidentally put a 2 in there. So we're going to go to 1.0, comma, negative 1.85. Enter. There we go. That gives us a little better result. So the kind of the lesson there is you know right away if you did something wrong. If it doesn't look right, obviously you typed something in wrong or made a small math error like I just did. Okay, so I'm going to hit check. That looks good. One of the things that you'll notice is that I do these kind of freehand. A lot of times I don't practice these before I make the video. And part of the reason for that is I want to run into some of the issues that you're going to run into. I don't want to have it be perfect. I want to make those mistakes so that when you make them, you can see how to fix them. I think that it's much more beneficial that way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to create my next radius, and again I'm going to use this arc, and I'm going to click this point. Now we know that our endpoint, our circle is, remember, it goes counterclockwise. So I want my endpoint to be the top of the circle, and I want my start point to be down here. So this is going to be my endpoint again. Difference is just where it's going to start. So I'm going to start at 0 now, and I'm going to go to 90. And you can see there, that gives me the circle that I want, or the arc that I want. And I'm going to hit check, and then I'm just going to simply come in, and I'm going to connect those with a tangent line. As long as this tangent is clicked on, you can click a tangent line. Now, one of the things that you need to be careful for, there's a pitfall here. If you go to click this line and you have something snapped like this, it is not going to make it tangent. What you need to do is you need to just click the line. It's going to have the line highlighted. You don't want a point clicked. And you can see the little X that it creates on my cursor. When I just have this, it doesn't give me that. Here it gives me a line with an X. That's giving a midpoint. I just want to select that line. See how it follows it around? This is a good way of testing to make sure that you got it right. And then that, I'll click. And there I have my correct part. So I'm going to hit check, and then I'm just going to divide this. Oops, there we go. All right. Now we have a correct part. Now, next what I'm going to do is, oh, I did make a mistake. Let me undo. One thing that I did do, I did not create the correct radius. This radius is different up here. Again, I went and looked at my print and double checked it and noticed right away that it was a problem. So I'm going to go back, do my endpoint again. I'm going to make this a 0.5 radius and click there. There we go. That's much better. And click this and click that. And now I can come to my, and that looks a little better. That looks much more like my part. Okay, so last thing I'm going to do is add my chamfers and my fillets. It looks like I have a 625 chamfer, and that is already set. So I'm just going to set that and hit check. It looks like I got all of my fillets, or sorry, all of my chamfers. Now I just got to do some fillets. Okay. So let's put a 0.1 in. Oh, that's already in. So we'll use, oops, got to make sure this is on normal, otherwise it'll do weird things like that. I'm going to hit my blue check mark, and then I'm going to adjust for a 0.005 right there. And as I've shown you in previous videos, we can actually put that on just simply by going into our toolpath and adding a corner round. But we're going to draw it because it tells us to draw it here. So I'm going to hit check. And I believe that is it. We already have this radius in there, which clearly was set wrong. See how that's dipping down in? So that wasn't right. Okay, so this is a good example of how to do some editing. So let's delete that, because if you can't tell, let me just draw a line across there so you can tell. See how that was set? Obviously that means that my my chamfer was set to clearance, or my circle, my fillet was set to clearance there, and I didn't realize it at the time, because when you go from a distance, it's kind of hard to tell. But we're going to fix that, so we're going to get out of there, and what I'm going to do is just delete this arc. And you're probably thinking, oh, well, now I got to redraw these lines. Actually, you don't. We do have the ability to extend these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to trim break extend. I'm going to go to extend, and it's just an extension of 0.1. Now, if that wasn't enough, I would just click it again until I got it long enough to cross the path. So now that it crosses, I'm just going to refill it. And I believe that is a fillet of 0.1. Okay, and we know we want a normal fillet this time. And that is much better. Okay, so that's all fixed. Okay, it looks like our part is completely drawn. And we are ready to do some of our toolpaths just as soon as we set up our stock. So let's set our stock up. We want to set this to our DZ plane. And one thing about this, we can actually set this default, and I'll show you that right now. I didn't show that in the operation defaults video, and I should have, but let's take a look at that. So if we go to machine, control definition, and I go to operation defaults, if I go all the way up, I can actually access my stock, and I can set some stuff up in here so that it defaults to certain things. And I hit yes. I always want it like that. I can also set my stock up so that I'm using margins, and I can always have that right margin at 10 thousandths. The left margin, that is going to depend. I can just say 2.0, and then I can make this the distance of my part every time. So I'm going to hit check, and I'm also going to set my properties up for my... Now the thing is, it won't let me do from stock on here. It won't let me actually automatically set that, unfortunately. So if you wanted to go in there and do that, that's a bit of a problem. You can't really do that, unfortunately. But anyway, we've got a lot of it set pretty much correctly, so that is very beneficial. The other things that I'm probably going to set is this assign tools sequentially, warn of duplicate tool numbers, and that would be good, and I'm happy with that. So that we're going to update those, and I'm going to hit check, and yes, I do, yes, okay. Alright, so now let's go into my stock and let's take a look. So it's already in the DZ plane. It didn't update for this one. It'll update for the next one. So my left margin, let's make this parts 3.0. Let's make my left margin 2 inches again, as usual. Right margin 0.1. And hit check. What you'll notice is in the next video I do, when I do the exercise, this stuff will already be pre-populated, the stuff that I changed in there. So let's go to our chuck jaws, and I'm not sure why, but we are not. This is profile the parameters. I'm not sure why it was on chain. I must have accidentally clicked that in the 1.5 in the defaults there. Okay, so let's do 1.5 grip, check, and check. So I didn't notice that, but let me go back into my control definition. And I must have accidentally clicked it and not noticed it. Operation defaults, and let's go to parameters, tool settings, whoops, stock. And let's go to properties. Here is what I want, from stock. Okay, so that's good. We'll make the grip length 1.5 as a norm, and I'll hit check. And this should also be set to DZ, check. Yes. And use margins. I'm not sure why it didn't take. I'm going to have to read the 2.0, check. Check. Save default settings. Check. Yes. Okay, there, I think it saved it now. I think I forgot to hit save default settings. That was my problem. Okay, so now we should be good. And the next tutorial I do should already have the jaws preset to grab onto 1.5 inches. It's just a matter of how long I make my part. The margin will always have an extra 2 inches. So, all right, let's take a look there, and let's go ahead and start programming this. Okay, so let's go to turning, and we're going to face it. Again, everything here is set correctly. All I need to do is change my tool, or select my tool, hit check, done. Roughing, I'm not even going into the parameters this time because I'm that certain that I know they're correct. Select, check, done. Finish, last tool, check. I need to select a different tool, check. Okay, and we need to drill. Okay, so our drill again is, oh, it's a 0.0625. Oh no, I'm sorry, no. Oh, it's a tap drill. So we're going to drill for 3/816 tap. Well, in that case, our tap is going to be 3/8 maximum diameter. So I want to put a little bit of a chamfer on there. So I'm going to use a 1/2-inch spot drill. And remember, if I want to put a 10,000th chamfer on the outside of it, my max diameter for that drill or that tap is 3/8. So I'm going to add my 10,000ths to each side of 3/8. So I'm going to add 20,000ths to that diameter, which is going to give me 0.395. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to make it 0.395. So I'm going to 0.395 divided by 2 because I want to do half of that. And it automatically does the math for me. I could also use this calculator if I wanted to. I'm going to turn my tip off for this because it's a spot drill, and I'm going to hit check. And then next I am going to go ahead and hit drill again, and we're going to drill this. And I just happen to know that the tap drill for a 1/4 inch is 5/16. Let's see here. Filter. It's just doing drills. We might have to go to a different menu. So we'll have to go to a different tool group here. So let's go, let's see here. Lathe mills, here's lathe drills. Lathe drills, let's do that one. Open. Okay, this has quite a few more choices for our drills. The other tool group, or our tool library, it has some drills, but it doesn't have them all. So let's go down, and we should see a 3 or 5/16 somewhere here. What I can do is go to my filter, and I have drill selected. English. Okay. Check. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to do view details, and then I'm just going to go by tool name. So you can see I have all my numbered drills here. It makes it a little easier to find them. 5/16, and there we are. So that makes things a little bit easier when you're doing that. So we have our drill, and let's go ahead and set our depth. Our depth appears to be, so our tap is 1 inch deep, so we need to take it a little further than that. So I'm going to take it an extra 1/4 inch. Actually, I'm going to take it an extra 100,000. So I'm going to go 1.1, and I'm going to turn my tip comp back on. And I can drill that with a 5/16. I don't need to peck it, but let's peck it anyway, just to show you what a pecking path looks like. We can do a couple of different peck paths. We can do a peck path that just uses one, or we can use subsequent pecks as well. I'm going to do 0.25 pecks, and it's just going to keep using that as well. And I'll explain this next year when we get to CNC. We'll talk about how we can do different peck cycles. For now, I'm just going to hit check. And it helps if I put a negative in there. That's why I didn't see it over here. And I do that a lot, unfortunately. Okay, there we go. And last but not least, or second to last, I guess, we need to do another drill. And we need to go and get our tap. Oops, I'm going to need to change my library for this, I believe. I don't think there's any taps in here. No, there's not. So we're going to need to go into our library and find some taps. So there's lathe taps. And let's take a look. We need a 3/816. 3/8, 16, right-handed tap. That's what we want. Okay, now this will automatically set the correct feed rate based on the spindle speed. So I'm going to set the spindle speed for 500, and if I click in inches per revolution, it should automatically change that, and it didn't. Constant, no, we want RPM 500. Let's go into that tap, and let's check that out. Okay, so we have 16 threads per inch. That looks good. And our feed rate, I want in inches per revolution. Spindle speed 500. Check. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to calculate this. So I'm going to say my feed rate needs to be 1 divided by, or sorry, the number of thread, 1 divided by the number of threads. So in this case, it's 16. So it's 1 divided by 16, and that is our feed rate in inches per revolution. And it will be spinning at 500 inches per minute. Generally, this will automatically update. For some reason, this was in inches per minute, and the tap was set that way, which is kind of odd. But we can always just override it manually. Okay, and depth is going to be 1.0, and we are going to take our tip compensation off for this. We are not going to peck. We are going to change it to a tapping cycle. And that will work. So we're going to hit check. Part of the reason some of this stuff might be a little off is because we're using a default lathe. We're not using an actual Haas lathe. For instance, this tap, G32, we wouldn't tap with a G32. We would tap with a G84 like we do in the mill. Again, this is for some default lathe, so that's why it might have things just a little bit different from what we're used to. Okay, and there we go. So we have a tapped part, and let's cut this thing off. Cut off, select there. Once again, I need to select my tool. I need to go back to my lathe tools. Where is it? Lathe inch, there we are. Okay, for this one, I actually like to view this one in large icons. 1/4 inch, there we are. Right-handed, 1/8 inch. So that's our tool, and I know everything in here is correct. And there we go. Okay, so let's take a look and run our simulation. See, everything looks pretty good there. So I like the way that works. Everything there looks good. I don't see any issues. We got our 3/8 tap. Obviously you saw that it did not show the threads in the tap or in the hole. That's normal. It won't simulate threads. It will only simulate threads if we cut them on the outside. So if I just run through this again quickly, you can see that it actually doesn't even. Let me check something quick, because it doesn't look like it's tapping that hole. That's kind of what I was suspicious of. It's not. We need to have a negative in there. And how did I know that? I knew that because the chamfer was too big, and it didn't show this size difference here. So what I'm going to do is now go and simulate it again. And let's take a look. There we go. Now we've got our hole tapped. Everything looks good. Okay. So once again, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or see me during class or in my office hours. I hope this was beneficial, and that is all.